Hello and welcome to Art Masters with me, Mrs. Portilla. Today we are going to be learning about a Series 1 artist for Art Masters. We're going to learn a little bit of history about this artist. We're going to see some slides of their work, and we're going to see a little glimpse of what this month's art project is. Paul Cezanne used geometric shapes in his paintings. He believed that he could paint everything in nature using a cone, a cylinder, a sphere, and a cube. He spent his whole life studying these shapes. His paintings that were based on these shapes changed the history of art in the 20th century. While other artists were painting realistic details and lighting in perfect perspective, Cezanne was busy painting basic shapes with hardly any detail and even less perspective or realism. Unfortunately, because Cezanne's art was so different, he was not given the respect he deserved until his last few years. Throughout most of his life, he was considered a strange and disagreeable man who roamed the hills painting and sketching. Cezanne didn't really care what people thought of him, though. All he wanted to do was study shapes. Although his paintings were not worth much during most of his life, in today's market, his paintings are worth millions. Today we will see how the mysterious stranger from Provence, France became the father of modern art. Here we have a self-portrait of Cezanne, an oil on canvas. So if we look carefully at this painting, we'll notice his hair. Is it straight or wavy? It's wavy. And we'll notice how the wavy lines in the hair are repeated on the wallpaper behind him. This gives us a sense of movement or action and the feeling that he was an active person. He was born on the 19th of January in Provence in the south of France. His father was a wealthy banker, and of course he wanted Paul Cezanne to join the business. But he was more interested in exploring the countryside, painting and writing poetry with his best friend. Cezanne's father sent him to law school, but Cezanne wanted to paint and finally convinced his parents to let him go to Paris to study art. In Paris, Cezanne learned to use his lighter and brighter colors for his shapes. Unlike the Impressionist painter of the time, Cezanne included black in his palette. Cezanne studied color throughout his life. He made copies of paintings of other famous artists so he could study the colors. He experimented with color in his own paintings by using warm and cool colors to show depth. Look at the colors in Cezanne's palette. Which colors seem to stand out more? Let's squint our eyes. You'll notice the warm reds and yellows stand out more. When Cezanne wanted an object to stand out or be in front of other objects in his painting, he used warm colors like yellow and red. When he wanted something to remain in the back, he often chose a cool color. So looking at his colors here, you'll notice that number 8, 9, 10 are definitely cool colors, so he would use those for the back. And then maybe number 3, 4, and 5 are definitely warm colors, so he would put those more in the front. In this portrait of Victor Choquet, Cezanne has used color and shape to show the figure and the space behind it. Look closely at the face. You can see that it's made of many colors and brush marks. The areas that Cezanne wanted to push back were painted with darker and cooler colors. In this way, Cezanne was able to make a flat surface, like the canvas, appear to be three-dimensional. Are there any details to make the face look realistic? Not really. He wasn't interested in making the painting that looked like a photograph. He used bold strokes and applied the paint with a big brush, a palette knife, or sometimes even his fingers. He built up shapes to make them feel solid. When Cezanne was asked to paint this portrait, he was very happy. He worked very hard to please Choquet and his wealthy friends. Can you tell how Cezanne felt about Choquet using your eyes? Is this man small or large compared to the size of the canvas? He's pretty big. He takes up the whole canvas. Did he use little brush strokes or big, bold brush strokes? Look at the back. It looks like big brush strokes. This kind of made Choquet look like he was strong and important. Sadly, when this portrait was hung in an art show, many people thought it made Choquet look like he had turned to stone. They did not understand how Cezanne was more interested in shapes than details. This next sketch is of the same man that we just saw. It's hard to tell that it's the same Choquet because Cezanne was not interested in making portraits look realistic. He was more interested in the shapes within the head. Like Lautrec, Cezanne began each painting with a sketch, but while Lautrec was interested in sketching lines, Cezanne was interested in sketching shapes. Sometimes he made detailed sketches of specific shapes, and other times he made small thumbnail sketches of the overall composition or design. Cezanne made sketches in pencil, chalk, and watercolor. He sometimes needed his model to pose more than 100 times before a portrait was completed. He required them to sit perfectly still like an apple. Once, a writer was sitting for Cezanne and he fell asleep and fell off his chair. Instead of helping the man, Cezanne scolded him. "Do I have to tell you again? You must sit like an apple." This is why Cezanne painted apples more often than people, because they stayed still. Here we have some still lifes with apples and peaches. A painting of everyday objects is called a still life. It was one of Cezanne's favorite subjects, and he would spend a long time setting up his still life arrangement before painting it. He would slip coins under pieces of fruit to make them sit the way he wanted. Each piece of fruit had to be just the right color. Notice how he repeated the color from the fruit in the background to create harmony in the painting. The shapes and sizes and colors were all planned to create a pleasing arrangement. In art, this arrangement is called the composition. He made the apples look three-dimensional by basing their shapes on spheres, kind of like a ball, instead of just a flat circle. He would darken the sides to make them go back and added lighter strokes near the center of the fruit to make them pop forward. He painted very slowly. Often the fruits shriveled before he even finished his paintings. He worked on many projects at the same time, and his painting took many years to complete. Sometimes Cezanne would tilt things in his painting just so they would fit into his composition or arrangement. Do you notice if anything's tilted in this painting? It looks like the plate of fruit and the green jar in the back are slightly tilted. Cezanne liked to tilt different objects to make your eye move around the painting. Which fruits do you think he used spheres for as a shape? The pears, the lemon, and the melon. They're all circular. Cezanne had to work very hard at making a career for himself as an artist. So he devoted a lot of time to painting and less time with his family. Cezanne worked hard on a new series of paintings, including The Card Players. He painted the subject over and over, each time making the composition a little bit better. The first of these paintings had 4 and 5 card players, and the last and most famous only had 2. Let's explore this composition or arrangement. If you draw an imaginary vertical line, or if we folded this in half, we can compare the shapes on the left with those on the right, and we'll find that they are opposites. The card player on the left is wearing a dark jacket, while our friend on the right has a light jacket. Their hats are even opposite, even the way that they are. The men, one seems very self-assured, well-dressed and well-groomed, while the other seems nervous and untidy. One of Cezanne's card player paintings became one of France's most beloved paintings because it was almost lost forever when thieves broke into the museum in France and stole it. Luckily, it was recovered when the government printed a postage stamp showing the painting. Cezanne used local workers from Provence as models for the card player series, but he also continued to use himself as a model, as in the next painting. So this is another self-portrait in a bowler hat. Because Cezanne was shy and a little awkward and moody, he didn't make friends very easily. He kept to himself and worked without stopping. He would rise early every morning and work in his studio. Then he would paint outdoors. He'd walk through the hills, painting and sketching. He was very hard on himself when he was unhappy with a painting. He would throw it down on the ground and leave, but we're not going to do that today. The people thought he was mysterious and uncivilized. While he littered the countryside with many landscape paintings he considered failures, he also kept many he considered worthy, like this next one. This is the mountains in Provence. Cezanne said that everything in nature is based on the cube, cone, cylinder, and sphere. Can you find those shapes in this painting? Squint your eyes and look carefully. You can notice some cubes that I think are supposed to be the houses. The cone is the mountain, and the trees almost have sphere shapes. If we were in a museum, we could walk up to this painting and see the thick strokes of paint and simple shapes more clearly. Let's look at a detail or a close-up of this painting. Which colors seem to pop out at you? I'd say those warm colors. And which colors seem to go back? Those blues and greens. While Cezanne painted, he made friends with some of the famous Impressionist painters, including Renoir. He was amazed at his composition and shapes that he created in his landscapes. The cube-shaped houses, the spherical-shaped treetops, made the landscapes more strong and powerful than anything he had ever seen before. The artist's friendship and support did a lot for Cezanne's spirit, and he worked harder than ever. Soon his work began to pay off. In the mid-1890s, his paintings started to sell for good prices. He painted several versions of a boy in a red vest, just like this one here. When he completed work on the paintings in this series, he had his first exhibition on his own in Paris. Other great painters of this time admired his work. Even the critics who had not liked his art changed their minds. They said that the mysterious artist had become a truly great man. But Cezanne paid little attention to his fame. He was more interested in working on new ideas about painting. He worked harder and harder to create painting in which the composition and shapes were more important than a realistic subject. The sketch for this painting was made of long, bold lines that followed the figure of the boy and the folds of the drapes. If you squint your eyes so you can only see the dark lines and shapes, it kind of looks like an abstract painting. As Cezanne worked on his compositions, his paintings grew more and more abstract, or not as realistic. This is Chateau Noir. It's easy to see what this painting's about. No, it's not, is it? There's no clear subject. That's because Cezanne was more interested in the composition and the shapes rather than making it look realistic. This was a new idea at the time when most artists were painting realistic pictures. The idea that the subjects were not as important as color and shape marks the beginning of modern art. The people who lived in this town by Chateau Noir believed it was haunted. Cezanne captured that mysterious feeling using shapes and colors rather than details. He liked his new style of painting that showed more than just what a place looked like, but also showed what it felt like. Little did he know that he was changing art forever. He made more and more paintings in this new modern style. Here's one of Cezanne's favorite views of Mont Saint-Victor. Near the end of his life, Cezanne lived alone and painted almost without stopping. He built a studio outside the city with views of this mountain of victory. He painted and sketched the mountain over and over. He painted 75 views of this on canvas and paper. And the last month of his life, he was caught in a thunderstorm while painting. He caught pneumonia and died. Today in Provence, Cezanne has become a major industry. The city has purchased his home and has turned his studio into a museum. There's a Cezanne retirement home, a Cezanne school, and a Cezanne garage and hotel. There are even large stepping stones, each stamped with a C, marking the old stone paths where Cezanne once walked. So today, the legendary recluse of Provence has turned into the father of modern art. The projects we will be doing for our 3rd and 4th and 5th graders will be doing some landscapes, trying to use our shapes. And for our kinder 1st and 2nd, we'll be doing a still life of fruit. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about Paul Cezanne and his shapes.